approval and permit extension, which is a total of 4 years. The benefits would include $200,000 contribution fee, purchase of the TDRs, and a payment of the future East Windsor Development Impact Fee, which the city has not yet adopted. In the transfer development ranks, this project is one of 6 Los Altos School District projects authorized by the City Council to participate in the program with the purchase of 80,000 square feet. This purchase will provide $10 million in new funds for the LASD project. And for the environmental, the initial study prepared for the project found that with implementation of the East Windsor Precise Plan standards and guidelines, state regulations and mitigation measures identified in the East Windsor Precise Plan EIR, the 2030 General Plan, and the Greenhouse Gas Emission Reduction Program EIR, the proposed office project and associated improvements did not result in any new environmental impacts for those beyond those evaluated in those EIRs. Next steps. This project is tentatively scheduled for the November 17th, 2020 City Council hearing. And with that, staff recommends approval. Recommend the council approve the initial study of environmental significance for 600 Ellis Street. And number 2, adopt a resolution recommending that the City Council approve this project. That concludes my staff report. There's also a few members as participants. I have Carol Neer and Christy Wise from David J. Powers and Daniel Rubens and Ryan Caldera from Fair and Peers to answer any questions. The applicant is also here to make a presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would the applicant like to begin his presentation?
Thomas Yee, are you going to be making?
Yes, Tim Steele, the applicant representing. Can you hear? Oh, by the way, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Tim Steele, who is with the Sobrato organization, will make a initial statement, and then I'll go ahead and walk the commissioners through the project. Tim. You know, Tim has his hand raised, so
But he's on mute. So.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Tim Steele, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Real Estate Development for the Sobrato organization. We are pleased to be here tonight to present to you our new project that is located within the recently adopted East Windsor Precise Plan area. As staff has indicated, we were granted a gatekeeper roughly at the same time the city initiated the new Precise Plan process and have been working with staff on our project design in parallel with the city's redevelopment or development of the plan for over the last 2 years now. We are excited to bring you this Precise Plan conforming high quality design project forward for your consideration. Our architect, Primary Architect Studios, has been with us from the beginning of this process. However, I do want to mention that our collective friend, David Salvaro, was the initial principal. I want to acknowledge all of his hard work and leadership in bringing this project forward. However, he recently retired, and his colleague and partner, Thomas Lee, has taken over as the lead architect, and we'll be presenting the project tonight. Our core design team is here, also including our landscape architect and our civil engineer, and we're available to answer any of your questions following Tom's presentation. With no further delay, Tom, please walk us through the project.
yes, thank you. Thank you, Tim, and thank you, members of the commission, city staff, Stephanie, the zoning administrator. We're very pleased to present this project this evening. It's very unusual to present a project in this manner, so we'll do our best. So I'm going to go ahead and share screen. All right. Can everybody see my screen? Okay. Well, as Tim mentioned, as Tim mentioned, we've been working on this project. My partner David, David Salvaro originally, and then myself more recently in the last year, to address this project and really create something that is unique for the city of Mountain View. We've, in this 2.5 to 3/4 year process, we've collaborated very closely with city staff and several meetings with DRC and several meetings with this group, the EPC. And we think because of that collaboration, we created a project that really encompasses the goals and objectives for the city and specifically the East Wistman specific plan. We have a project we think is really first rate. It complies completely with the principles and goals and objectives of the East Wistman plan, and also is consistent with all the design guidelines that are apropos to the employment character area in which this project is located. So we're consistent with all those design guidelines, and consequently, we're able to design this project without asking for any exceptions within the East Wistman precise plan. So we're in complete conformance with those guidelines. The project, as Margaret mentioned, is located in the North Employment character area. Here's the site right there. If you can see my cursor. Freeway 101 is right there. NASA Ames is across the freeway to the north. Freeway 85 is here. 237 is here. North Wistman Road is here. Ellis is here. And that's the project site. So we've got a great access. We've got great access to the VTA, which runs along here toward the Wistman Station, and the North Bayshore NASA Station just on the other side of 101. Here's a blow-up of the site in its existing condition. Here's Ellis Street right here, a Fairchild right here. This is the site that you see here, the 4.45 acres of the site. Has a little bit of a dogleg to it on the east side. This is the building that will remain, 636 Ellis. These are the two buildings, existing buildings, that will be removed as part of the development project. These are some site photos. I heard at the beginning of the meeting that several of you have been out to the site. You can see the top picture is a view of the site from the northeast corner across Fairchild. Here's a view across Fairchild looking at the two existing buildings. A view across Ellis looking at the 636 Ellis building. And so again, our plan is to retain the building on the corner at 636 Ellis. As I mentioned earlier, the project was conceived early on with the notion of trying to work with the city and promote its goals. As the East Wistman precise plan came into fruition, and this is an excerpt from the plan, we felt our project fit right in, and we wanted to again promote and reinforce those goals and objectives. One of which are to promote the future linkages for publicly accessible pathways for bicycles and pedestrians. You can see our site right here. This is 101. Our site is this L shape right here. And so part of our plan was to locate the parking garage just north of our south boundary line to allow for this future connection that's highlighted in the East Wistman precise plan. So we're making way for that and providing for that future connection. We're also cognizant of the fact that this project has very great proximity to the VTA, the Middlefield Station, and great access from 101 and 237. This is a site plan of the project. Again, for orientation, this is Ellis Street on the bottom of the screen, Fairchild on the right. This is the site parameters, the shape right here. This is the 636 Ellis Street building on the corner. This is our building right here, the 6-story, 259,000 square foot office building situated fronting onto Fairchild, which again reinforces one of the precise plan objectives. We located the garage toward the south side of the site, again away from, as far as possible from direct view from Fairchild or Ellis. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we're locating the garage just north of the property line, some distance to allow for this a future pathway in the precise plan to occur. And so again, we're making way for the goals of the precise plan. Internal circulation. The primary entrance will be off Ellis. That'll serve as the main vehicular access to the site. There is a secondary entrance on Fairchild, which will be the service access to the garage and service areas, for example, the loading dock on the building. We also work very closely with EPC, your commission, and with staff to eliminate the driveway, which used to be here in the current condition. By eliminating that driveway, we're reinforcing the pedestrian linkage along Fairchild, and also creating a nice little pocket here, open space-wise, which James Stockman will get into, the landscape architect, between the two buildings. And then the blue lines indicate the circulation pathways through the site. This is the landscape plan, which we developed with the Gazzaro Associates. And I'd like to turn it over to James to pick it up from here and describe some of the features on the landscape and open space plan. James? James, are you on?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Are you there, James?
Yes, great.
Okay, I can drive. Why don't you go ahead and describe? All right, go ahead.
Okay, so let me just go over the high-level improvements we've made since this was last in front of you. And we've taken a lot of good approaches recommended by the EPC and the DRC to further enrich in this plan. Some of the high-level items are, we wanted to respect the open space bolstering, so it's now 20% larger, and not only is the open space larger, but it's also heavily programmed throughout the site, and it serves both the office, we think, and the community at large. So that was a great recommendation by the EPC. Another element is we enhanced the key corner. That was EPC and DRC's great suggestions, and we'll go into a slide in a little more detail of that. And closing the Fairchild drive cut was another good element, as Tom mentioned, that enabled a bridge between both buildings, and it, by eliminating that flow through traffic, vehicular traffic, now it's sort of given back to the pedestrian as a grander plaza if you were to sort of separate and close off that section of parking. And at the end of that is a raised gathering area that could double as a stage, so you can envision this really be bolstered and activated. On the screen here, the key corner, we went through several iterations with DRC and EPC, and we agree with all of it, and we think this is really a bolstered product. It now serves as not only a gateway for the immediate Wisman area that this lives in, but also on the pedestrian scale, it's activated and it's amenitized. There's a rich mosaic of paving. There's a special palette of planting that will set this off, and there's some elements like artful seating elements that would tie into the rest of the site that would be available for public use. And there's some sculptural light elements, as you can see in the rendering.
Can you also mention the specimen tree? Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. So there's a pair of wonderful heritage trees, which is why the sidewalk jogs as it does. That we're respecting those, and then we're adding another scale element of a special specimen tree on the corner there. So it'll be kind of some day one interest as a gateway to this micro neighborhood.
And James, can you also talk a little bit about some of these programmed areas on the the landscape concept, please? Yeah.
So before you saw this, the existing building wasn't really amenitized on the site. It was dressed up but not sort of activated. We've got the key corner and the area between the key corner, existing building, and the new building, which is all activated. These are all Some of them are adjacent to stormwater areas, which is another EPC bullet point. So we're now amenitizing a few of the stormwater areas with observation decks and some platforms that span part of that. The outdoor dining and flex use area adjacent to the building has been enlarged, and we feel that'll be a great activator. There's an arrival plaza adjacent to what we think of the parking area as much as a pedestrian plaza as it is sort of a day-to-day parking area. It's easily closed off, sectioned off. You can bring food trucks in. There's a great arrival experience now underneath the bridge of the buildings. It's all pedestrian scale and pedestrian material. So I think it'll be a great experience.
Okay. Thanks, James. And I just want to also touch on a couple of the massing concepts alluded to earlier and how we dealt with the site. As you can see, here's the site, the office building, the parking garage, the connector. We looked at the setbacks, so this complies with the precise plan as far as setbacks from public streets, side yards. Again, we placed the garage away from the direct views from public streets. We also looked at several options for the massing of the building, excuse me, and what we decided to do with the consultation with staff and EPC and DRC was to inflect the building so that it's orthogonal and perpendicular to Fairchild. We think that creates a great frontage along the street and of course along 101. And the massing of the building also complies with the precise plan in terms of creating an innovative concept and breaking down the mass so that there are scaled elements in the building arrangement and the massing arrangements. The other thing it does is by inflecting the building, we're creating the building's main entrance right here. And so again, the precise plan really makes a point of having buildings emphasize their main entrance, and that's what happens there. We also looked at these heat map diagrams. This is one of a series of probably 30 or 40 studies we did at different times of the day, different times of the year, and in terms of studying what are the areas of the building that we need to be concerned about, so that we can make smart decisions about the design of the curtain wall, shading elements that take away direct sunlight on the building. Our goal is to reduce heat gain on the building, therefore reducing energy usage and cooling loads and so on. And our goal, and so these diagrams really helped us achieve some of these design objectives, as well as create, utilize quality materials, which is again called for in the precise plan. And our goal is to achieve LEED Platinum with this project, and that is something that the ownership has committed to. These are floor plans that show the 6 different floors of the building, from the first level, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. One of the things that we did in designing the building was also to learn from what James and the team did on the ground level for open space, and bring some of those concepts upstairs to the building. So on level 5, in the connector between the garage and the building, there's an open space opportunity, a deck, as is the case on floor 6, level 6. There are also 2 decks, one on the west and one on the south and the east. And so again, we're trying to extend that concept up into the building, which we think is going to be a real positive. We did look at some precedent ideas about buildings of this scale. Undoubtedly, many of you are familiar with this project in Mountain View, but we also looked at examples in your neighboring communities, as well as examples outside the state. And so what we'd like to do now is to walk you through a few of the perspective views on the building. This is a view from the east, looking west toward the building. Here you see the building, the office building, 6 stories without the landscaping. It's just to illustrate what's happening. And you can see these deep overhangs, which Margaret alluded to in her staff report. These are 5-foot-long overhangs that extend beyond the curtain wall of the building. They provide valuable sun shading capabilities for the building to cool the building down. and also extend to this architectural language on the building. We also indented or recessed the first 2 floors on the east side to again emphasize the main entrance to the building. And you can see the view down below shows it in the context of the landscaping. This is a more developed drawing of the main entrance, as if you were standing on the west side of 636 Ellis, looking toward the new office building. You can see the main entrance here with the recessed 2-story expression, the horizontal panels that extend and create this eyebrow across the length of the building, the connector to the garage, the drop-off point there for buses and vans. So we think this is going to be a tremendous space, plus the special paving between the 2 buildings, as James mentioned, would be an opportunity for gathering space and for special events. This is an elevation of a view of the west side of the building looking east. You can see again the variation of the facade, the horizontal expression, the connector piece to the garage, and I'm also add the photovoltaic panels on top of the garage, which serve as the roof of the garage, as part of the LEED Platinum elements, so that we're creating creating energy on site and saving it on site for use by excuse me, but for use by the project. This is the view of the project from the northwest going on 101, looking to the south. This is the 6-story office building. One of the one of the goals of the precise plan was to, because this is a gateway site, was to really create a handsome mark for the city of Mountain View as you enter Mountain View from this side of the freeway. And then this is another developed drawing, again looking back toward the east side of the site. Here's the main entrance, and these prominent extensions on the building, these concrete floor panels that will again create valuable shading to the project. And you see little peek outs of open space on these upper decks, which we think is a great way to extend the open space concept into the building. Okay, so that's our presentation, and we'd like to go ahead and open it up to the commissioners and staff for any questions or any comments. We appreciate you taking time to view our presentation.
All right. Thank you very much for that presentation, and also thank you to staff for the introduction. Since this is a public hearing, we will start with questions from the commission, then move to public comment, and then move back to the commission for deliberation and action. So let's start with the commission. Are there any questions to the applicant or staff? Please raise your hand. Commissioner Lowe.
Thank you for the great presentation. I have a couple of questions. One is, given the proximity of this project to Highway 101, what are some of your considerations for mitigating the noise and air pollution from the highway?
Well, in terms of the acoustics, we feel like some of the mature landscaping at the ground level, because we are replacing 23 heritage trees with about 100 other trees. We think that plus the landscaping and some of the low walls in the landscape zone will be important in mitigating both wind and noise at the ground level, and protecting pedestrians and tenants as they use these adjacent outdoor spaces. Some of the other features that James alluded to, like the Zen garden and those other spaces adjacent to the building, will also be even more protected because they're smaller scale buildings. In terms of the acoustical issues, Commissioner Lowe, that you raised, we are looking very carefully at the curtain wall and the facade design of the building, the glass, the glazing systems. We've looked at insulated glass feature elements as part of the facade treatment. Insulated glass does provide some acoustical value and mitigating noise from the freeway. So we think that's something we're going to investigate further as we get into the specific design development phase of the project. So again, those are areas that we're looking at. Some of the upper decks on the building, which are used, for example, the fifth floor deck, which is between the garage and the building, is actually, we're using the building to shoulder the noise from the freeway because it's actually behind the building there. And then the decks up on floor 6 and also utilize the building as a kind of a shoulder and a protection as sort of a leeward side of the noise, so to speak, from the freeway.
Okay, other questions, Commissioner Lowe? Commissioner Lowe, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. I heard that you mentioned an observation deck over a stormwater treatment area. Could you give a little bit more information about that?
Sure. James, can you touch on that, please? You might be on mute, James.
Am I on now?
Oh, there you go. Okay, please, go ahead.
Great. Yeah, so there's a few stormwater treatment areas adjacent to the building that were, stormwater treatment areas in the past historically have been sort of shoved off to the back 40 and they've just been utilitarian, but through the commission's recommendations, we've embraced some adjacency of pedestrian activity to them. And there's a few that have raised decks that, yep. So there's one right to the, yep, you're almost there. There's one there. So it's sort of a deck at grade, and then as the stormwater treatment area recedes at a typical 3-to-1 slope, you'll have sort of an overlook that extends out and interacts with that stormwater treatment facility. And we think these can be beautiful things, and we're trying to embrace them and use them as a pedestrian amenity. And there's another one just to the plan north of the existing building as well. And the one just to the plan north of the existing building actually bridges over, yeah. So, it's certainly an attractor of wildlife, and we think we can have a really interesting plant palette that makes it quite interesting.
So the one along Fairchild, that deck is accessible to pedestrians?
The one along Fairchild.
I'm seeing the cursor circling, so I'm assuming that's a deck.
So yeah, on the upper portion of the screen there, the darker portion of the screen next to the stormwater treatment area is an accessible deck. Yeah, it does span and sort of cantilever over the drop of the stormwater treatment area.
Mm-hmm. And is the open area between the new building and the old building intended to be publicly accessible?
That indeed that is publicly accessible. The outdoor amenity area immediately hugging the office building to the plan south is privatized for a dining experience.
Oh, okay. So that's the dining area. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah. And for the key corner, I appreciate, the addition of a specimen tree. I was curious why you decided to choose the blue Palo Verde.
It's a preliminary choice. We think it would be very distinct and interesting. We're certainly open to recommendations or suggestions if that's not taken well.
I didn't mean that. I'm just curious, what's the reasoning for it?
Oh, yeah, distinctness. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
to set it off.
Well,
Okay.
Hey, James, can you describe, for example, the size of the tree when it gains maturity, its coverage, and is it a deciduous tree? Is it its shape and so on? What are some of the factors that led you to this decision or this recommendation?
Yeah, great. So there's nothing else that quite looks like it. It has green bark and sort of green branches. It's very airy and light, so it won't completely block the existing building and its functions, but it will have a nice horizontal scale. And it has a little bit of a whimsy to it.
Mm-hmm. And so what will be its maturity size? Like, would it reach about 20 or 40 feet high, or?
I would say somewhere in the middle of that, yeah.
So it's
actually in the 30 feet, yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of like a medium-sized tree that you want there, but you don't want to block the building completely. But it will provide.
Not completely.
It will provide sufficient shade to the people who are walking in that corner.
That's right. Yeah,
okay.
And we also want to respect those two existing heritage trees, which will have a presence as well.
Right,
yeah.
to give them space. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for that. That's it for now. Thank you, Chair Cox.
All right. Let's move on to Commissioner Schmiesing.
Thank you. Just a couple questions. I was wondering, this might be a question for staff, but the 3-year extension, so the 7-year time frame, has the school district weighed in on that, and the change in time frame for the TDR? Is there any, I guess, impact on the school district from that?
The TDRs would have to be paid for as part of the conditions of approval. So that would already have to be paid for. So that's not part of the development agreement.
Okay, so like I might be naive or just not understanding, but do they have to pay for the TDR within the current time frame, or if they get the approval for the 7-year extension, would that change the time frame for paying the TDR? And if so, does that impact the school district at all?
Tim, do you think you can answer that question?
Yes, thank you. I had my hand up. No one was acknowledging my hand. Look, it's blue and it won't wave. Sorry. We're technically going to be the first of the 6 to purchase TDRs. We're going back and forth on developing their first purchase agreement with the district and the district's attorney. It's just like a purchase of land or property. It's a PSA that acknowledges this. Right now, without getting into the final deal points, because the contract hasn't been agreed to completely, there's a very similar time period for us to close that aligns with the development agreement timeline. And I mean, the alternative is we won't close if we can't build a building. There's a lot of money. And they know it, and they can't sell any of the others to anybody else unless someone was building a building. So we want to work together to kind of hold this together as much as we can and be able to purchase it at the full price that we negotiated pre-COVID, and to kind of hold on to that price a little bit longer until we get a little bit of a market again, and hold that price up. That's where the need for a development agreement to kind of hold everything together for a period of time to let COVID settle down and let the market return. Does that kind of hit is that better? Does that get to your question?
Yes, thank you. Let's see. I think, well, I was definitely encouraged to see the drawings that look at, right, the bike lane accessibility. And again, maybe more of a staff question, but just driving around the area, there's so many great things in the TD or transportation plan that encourage biking, but I know the area isn't fully bike laned out. Like there's still chunks of road that don't have great protection for bike lanes, and was wondering what the timeline is for the city in terms of bike lanes in that area and kind of what the thought is there.
Renee, did you want to answer that question?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Renee Gunn. I'm one of the Public Works engineers working on this project, and the camera's very weird. I'm sorry about that. So we do have a couple of projects that are already in the works for bike lanes. There's a project that is going from Manila Drive, which is north of 101, down to the intersection of Fairchild and Alice. Basically improves bike lanes underneath the 101 bridge. That project is close to going out to construction. But the major bike lanes on Ellis and Fairchild aren't scheduled as CIPs at this point in time. We would start more development before we see those.
I think those are my only questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's go on to Commissioner Capriles.
Oh, thank you. I wanted to ask the staff a question. Are there any other projects in the pipeline that are in line to purchase some of the transfer development rights? Or is this the only project?
No, council has authorized, I believe, 5 other gatekeepers as part of the program.
And are they all proposing to go into the East Wisman area?
They are not. There's one other office project that's in the East Wisman area.
Okay. No, to Commissioner Schmiesing's question, we just wanted to understand if there was any holdup on the development agreement that would impact the Los Altos School District from proceeding with their project. So I guess this is all kind of a learning for all of us, because we haven't had a project before us that, we have had to consider the impact of one project on another, and this one is a little more tricky that we haven't seen. So just curious to know if that would the development agreement would hold up the Los Altos School District from proceeding with that school.
So the MOU is got to be active. I believe it was a 10-year MOU. So the idea is that all of the TDR units be allocated within that time and paid for. But at this time, the projects that were authorized by council as gatekeepers, I'm sorry about that. I hit the stop video. Are making their way through the development review process at different paces.
Okay. I think the pandemic has kind of slowed us all down on these things. So just was idly curious of the overall impact, and hopefully we can at least take one step forward. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Cranston.
A couple questions all related to each other. I guess first for the applicant, is there any, in the current plans, is there any plan for a fitness center or anything like that in the building?
Currently in the plans, there's no plan for a fitness center, although we do have facilities for a bike storage and a shower facility for same.
And then I guess this is a question for staff. In my reading of the conditions of approval, basically the building code that would come into place is when they actually file the final documentation to secure the permit. And so any changes in the the building code between now and when those are filed would then apply at the time that they apply for the permit, or is that locked in now at the beginning of this process?
I think can I field that one, Margaret?
Oh, sure.
If the EPC approves the project today and the commissioner, the city council approves it in November, then we'll have the approval as of 2020. I think it's we're going to consult with the applicant, the Bravo organization, and determine, when the building will be designed further to a point where we can submit it for a building permit with the city of Mountain View. At that time, once they give us the go-ahead to proceed with the project to the next phases, we're going to need to anticipate what the applicable code is at the time they, quote, drop the flag to let it start. And so we do this all the time. When a developer works with it, we work with a developer to anticipate a building permit goal. Then it's our responsibility to check with the city of Mountain View what the prevailing codes will be at the time we think the application will be submitted to the city for permitting and plan checking.
But the building code applicable to a project is whatever's in effect when they submit the.
Yes. So for example, when we updated the formal application from last year, we went through and updated all the codes that we think are applicable starting next year. All right. So, and we'll go through that process probably again if, depending on, again, the timing of the developers, Sobrato's organization's phasing a plan for the implementation plan for the project. Excuse me. So at the time that we submit the project for plan check with the city of Mountain View, that time we need to comply with those building codes in effect at that point in time.
Okay.
Does that
way of things answer me as well?
Yes. Looks like it.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that if you're asking specifically to the development agreement, we are not asking for any extensions of any fees or anything beyond. There's nothing locked. The only thing is essentially being extended is the entitlement itself, rather than timing out in 2 years, times out in 7.
Actually, my question is folks have been mentioning COVID-19, and I realize that it's very early in what we're learning about this disease, but there's been some indication that ventilation is an extremely important element of reducing the risk of transmission. There are indications that this is going to be with us for a long time, and so I just want to be sure that as the city looks at if there's any decision to require additional ventilation, or if there's any plans, particularly for a fitness area, which has been identified as an area where improved ventilation is required, that those kind of things would anything that's in place would be required at the time that the applicant submits their plans, and not get locked into something that today doesn't account for that. So it sounds like if something is changed in the codes, Stephanie and Margaret, that'll get factored in, and the applicant would have to apply that. So I guess that's. Mm-hmm. I would feel better if there was a known location for a fitness center, that the applicant was kind of anticipating that, even regardless of any specific code requirements, to make sure that those. I don't think this disease is going away. So building a COVID, not proof, but a more COVID tolerant building would be a good thing. That was my question.
Great, Commissioner.
Yeah, very good questions and good comments, Commissioner. I think those are, we're designing other projects that have taken what you just mentioned, into account. We are designing a fitness center right now in South San Francisco for another client, and those issues have come up: air changes, ultraviolet filtration, a number of systems that are really not even in the code today, that we're looking forward to to again, innovating, thinking forward about, like you say, this COVID thing or things like that. may be with us for a while. So those are or higher filtration systems, higher air changes, more outside air. Those are all issues that we're aware of. I think the other thing which is germane to your comment is the amount of adjacent open space to the building. Those are going to be very valuable, because it's been fairly clear, I think, to many people that outdoor spaces are outdoor dining, outdoor recreation, those kinds of features which are inherently planned into this project are going to be extremely valuable, not only to the public, but to the tenants in the building. So again, that strategy has already been in place.
Okay, do you have more questions, Vice Chair Cranston?
Nope, I'm done, thanks.
Okay, let's move over to, it looks like Commissioner Lowe has a follow-up question.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a follow-up question for the staff regarding the permit extension. Are there any drawbacks for the city to grant an extension like this? And also, are there any other developers who are asking for similar extensions?
So a development agreement there's negotiated terms. So in terms of drawbacks, I don't think there's any drawbacks for the city. It's within our control as we approve it, as to what are the negotiated terms. In terms of who else has received a development agreement, Intuit in the North Bay Shore had a development agreement. Most recently, the LinkedIn campus in the East Lisbon area also had a development agreement. And there was numerous other ones in the past, but those were the two most recent.
Okay, let's see. Commissioner Haymeyer, did you have some questions?
Vice Chair Cranston asked the exact question I wanted to gain clarification on, so thank you.
Okay, then I'll ask what questions I have. So this is to the developer. So can you give me an idea what's going to gate your decision of when to start building? I mean, are you looking for a particular level of COVID being done? I mean, are there other financial considerations? Like what get you out of the gate with this?
When's the last time you went to Vegas? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah,
I'm not asking you to tell me what time. I'm not asking you to tell me what time, but the kinds of things you're looking for.
Yes, I'm sorry to be a little. I'm sorry. It's been a long day.
I'm just being Ed McMahon to your Johnny Carson.
Yeah. We really, we don't want to be in denial, but I will say we have been very optimistic about how the valley will come back, how our large employers are going to come back. We've been doing this for a year now, almost a year, and watching what's happening. We're starting to see some improvements. We're starting to see larger companies who once said we'll never go back to work starting to say, well, that might not be, a real reasonable, rational thinking for the future. There's probably going to be some modifications to how we come back. How, are we working 7 days a week, or are we going to move back to 4 or 5 as far as commuting? But the ideas where we were hearing spaces are going to, have to have all this expanded space within a building is really more of a temporary thing. Because once we start getting that, the herd mentality, or things kind of settle down and people start going back to work, we're going to probably start seeing similar kinds of occupancy, which means then the demand for real estate starts to pick up again for new space. What is unique about building in this market, which we are also optimistic about, is this is a building that, as Commissioner Cranston was asking questions about, this is a building you get to build from scratch. This is a building you get to put in a new ventilation system. and a new fitness center and new bathrooms, and you get to build it the way you want and how you want to anticipate dealing with your employees in that building from scratch. You're not redoing it someone else, or, old school or whatever. You have an opportunity to grow into a brand new building with brand new approaches to how to deal with COVID or other future pandemics. So we are optimistic. Will it be tomorrow? I kind of think there's a little bit of warmth out there with some interest that we might start sooner than later if we can get this approved.
Okay. Thank you. Now I have a question back to staff. So as far as I can tell, maybe you can confirm this, all the other TDRs that were lined up, as far as we know, no one's backed out yet. Is that right?
There has been discussion that some developers may not want to pursue, but it's not over till it's over.
Okay. What would you do if it turned out that somebody wanted to back out? Would you try to sell the TDRs to someone else?
Yes, I do want to make it clear, the TDRs are sold by the school district and not the city. Mm-hmm. We are helping facilitate that through the development process, but yes, there would be a secondary market if the TDRs that were allocated to the specific properties were not pursued. Okay,
and it does sound like, I know we were dancing around the issue a little bit, but it does sound like there's the potential that if the project construction were delayed, that there might be also a delay in the receiving of the funds. Is that true? For some project, not necessarily this one. That either goes to Eric or Stephanie.
Yeah, so payment to the school district would be at the time that the deal is finalized.
What does that mean? Approval of the project or building permit or what? What does deal finalized mean?
Well, and Stephanie, if I can jump in, maybe you can correct me if I'm not sure you're going to answer. Go ahead. I was just going to comment that I think under the conditions of approval, there has to be a certificate of transfer provided to the city prior to building permit issuance. Okay. I don't know in terms of the timing whether or not the completion of the sale and transfer would occur. It could occur before that time, but at least under our conditions, I think that's how it's specified. But Stephanie, you might have some greater insight on that. Maybe not.
No, that's correct. And I think Tim kind of clarified earlier when they were anticipating doing that.
Then let me ask about community benefits. Has any specific community benefit for this project been identified? And there was a dollar amount I think I saw in the staff report, but not anything more than that, right?
Yes, it's $200,000 to be paid 20 days after the project's approved.
Okay, but we didn't say what we would use the money for.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you know, Steph?
Yeah, that's correct. It's not earmarked for any specific projects. It would go to the CIP list of projects and be allocated as appropriate at that time.
Let's see. Yes, I just also wanted to mention, to follow up on what Zoning Administrator Williams had said. I had asked at the chair meeting about other projects with development agreements, and they had pointed out that both the Intuit project and the LinkedIn project had 7-year agreements, just as this one does. So this is not a new precedent being set, and that the Intuit project actually had people. It's not completed completely yet, but it has, before COVID, it had people occupying the building. And so there's good reason to believe that this could work out well too. Those are my only questions. I see Commissioner Schmeezing with her hand up. Do you have a follow-up?
Sorry, just to the community benefit question. In the conditions of approval, it looks like it says an estimated total contribution of 2.9 million, but you said 200,000, and I wasn't sure which was right, or maybe I'm reading it wrong in here.
Oh, that was for the DA, the development agreement.
Oh, okay, cool. Never mind.
All right. And I see Mr. Steele with his hand up. Okay. See, I know how to find Mr. Steele with his hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to say the same thing, that the East Westman Precise Plan had a fixed community benefit fee of $25 a foot, which is the 2.9 million that was just referenced, and then the 200 is above and beyond that, specifically related to requesting the development agreement. So both of those are included. Thank you.
Okay, and all right, and I just have a follow-up question to staff. What goes into the decision of how to price the development agreement?
It's a negotiated amount based on what is being requested and you know what's going on in the area at the time.
All right. Okay, are there other commissioners with questions? All right, not seeing any, I will close the initial questioning from the commission and go over to public input. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on this item? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Phone users can mute and unmute themselves with *6. EPC Clerk Whitehill will start the timer and let you know when your time is up. Clerk Whitehill, are there members of the public that would like to comment on this item?
We do have one member. Just give me 1 second. Let me get set up. All right. So Bruce England, I'm going to allow you to talk. Go ahead.
There we go. I had to unmute. You hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, commissioners and staff. Just a few comments on this project. I've been looking at a lot of different plans and proposals and things related to the area, and I see that improvements to Fairchild, you know, where Ellis connects and then going, I guess it's west from there, that's called out a low priority according to the bicycle transportation plan. And any of you, if you've ever happened to bike along there, it's really miserable. The road surface is awful, and there's virtually no lighting until you get to North Wisman Road. And I'm wondering if that could be given a higher priority given this project, or at least aligned with the project. Second, I'm not sure about the tree choices along the roadways, but if the trees could be not cone dropping and not low hanging, that would be great. There are a lot of trees in that area that do drop cones along the bikeways, and they're not particularly good if you happen to be biking through there. Also, with the landscaping, if trees and landscaping in general could be chosen to protect migration paths through the area. Yeah, I mentioned the lighting already, and the resurfacing of Fairchild. I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. England. Are there other members of the public that would like to comment?
No one else at this time has their hand raised to comment.
All right, thank you. Not seeing any others, we will go back to the Commission for deliberation and action. Please raise your hand if you would like to comment or ask additional questions. All right, I'm waiting. There's Commissioner Haymeyer.
Sure, I can start us off. I really like the changes we've seen to this since its last iteration. I desperately miss the LEED Platinum building I used to work in, and I think this is the right kind of development that really has been thoughtful about open space. And among the improvements that I like the most, I really do think eliminating the driveway on Fairchild will help improve pedestrian circulation, make it a little bit safer for bicyclists, and really draw to that pedestrian access in between the existing building and the future building. This is in many ways a realization of the East Wisman precise plan. It's high intensity. I appreciate that the developer has given thought to the pathway that is envisioned in the precise plan, so that there really can be improved connectivity in this new area of the city. And I appreciate the landscape architectural improvements as well about integrating the stormwater retention basins and making them more inviting. I do share Vice Chair Cranston's concerns. I appreciate Tim's optimism, but I think it's going to be a long time before we go back to work in the same kind of way where people are regularly going to office campuses. And I just want to ensure that there is the flexibility, and it sounds like to the extent possible, depending on when the building plans are pulled or submitted, to allow for that kind of flexibility, because it is a 250,000 square feet of office space, and I just don't know how many employees that will support and how many employees are going to be taking public transit, as much as I want to return to my lifestyle where I took public transit to a LEED Platinum building. But we're planning for the future, and I like this project and the improvements that we've seen. So I will be voting in favor of it.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Haymeyer. Commissioner Lowe.
I echo what Commissioner Haymeyer just said. I actually have one more follow-up question. I am very excited about the pedestrian improvement along Fairchild, and want to make sure the trees are selected there to provide sufficient shading for the pedestrians who are using that, as well as what Bruce brought up about trees with no cones along the bike lane. However, I wanted to point out that when I read the arborist report, it says when the tree inventory was made, no plans for site improvements were available at the time of inspection. So I just wanted to make sure that the arborist has had a chance to take a look at the plans, as they stand right now.
Is that specifically towards someone, Commissioner Lowe?
Yeah, I maybe for Mr. Yee.
Okay. All right, can you hear me again?
Yeah.
All right. I think those are all very good comments. I don't mean to pass the buck here, Commissioner Lowe, but I'm going to ask James, our landscape architect, to jump in here and address some of the questions about the status of the arborist review of our plans. Obviously, we would have, I can tell you point blank that we will have an arborist review our report, and review the plans and the tree disposition. As part of the submittal, we did provide a tree disposition plan that basically indicated all the existing trees that are to be removed, all the existing trees that are to obviously be retained. That's part of our normal review, to have an arborist review all those items before we proceed into more detailed design. James, do you want to add anything to that, please? You're on mute.
Am I unmuted?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, great. Yeah. So, of course, we'll integrate all arborist recommendations going forward and paths, and they'll likely be on site during construction for monitoring. I guess maybe I'm not understanding the direct question here.
Okay. Yeah, because the arborist report specifically stated no plans for the site improvements were available when he inspected the trees and produced the tree inventory report. So I just wanted to make sure that the arborist has had a chance to be, or the arborist has continued to be involved with the project to help with tree selections and make sure tree protections is will be respected during construction time and stuff like that.
Yeah, I understand. So, yeah, we will have full construction details and procedures for not only the City of Mountain View's preferences for how existing trees are handled during construction, but our own in-house Gazardo partnership preferences for how that's done. And we understand it's not lost on us how important that aspect is of the project, and we'll do whatever it takes to sort of enforce that.
And
if that answers your question.
Sorry. Commissioner Lowe, that's also a condition of approval is the tree protection. So the trees will be protected.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you.
Commissioner Capriles.
Thank you. I appreciate the flexibility of the applicant. I think we're in a time where there's a lot of unknowns here, and I think the idea of, you know, being sensitive to the ventilation and to other items that we have been requesting, we appreciate your honoring that. I think that's going to benefit both the city and the occupants and the applicant for, you know, the future needs. And so I think the building design and your response to our initial feedback has been heard, and we definitely appreciate that. And I think this project is a great example of what our expectations will be within the East Wisman area. We're being very careful and cognizant about what we do want to put in this area, because it's you know, a new area and one of the first that is going in there. So I hope this will be an example to the other projects coming to us, that we need to have that flexibility, but also be sensitive to the new codes that may arise as a result of our experiences during this time. So I too will be approving the recommendation to the council, and thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Smeezing.
Yeah, I echo what a lot of my fellow commissioners have said. I really appreciate, as a bike commuter, how many different options to support active transportation as well as public transportation went into the TDM, the LEED Platinum, and efforts to make this a sustainable building, I thought were great. I'm hopeful to see this project. I know that the timeline, of course, is uncertain with COVID, but unfold alongside the city's efforts to improve bike lanes in the area and improve pedestrian and bicycle transit. Yeah, I would love to see those kind of happen conjointly. And I think, you know, given all of the uncertainty with development at this time, and also the fact that it is a new building, allowing for incorporation of some of those additions and safeguards that, such as, you know, improve ventilation, that support health, not just for COVID, but I'm sure just in general, will be great to see. Yeah, will also be supporting this project. Thank you.
Okay. Vice Chair Cranston, thank you.
Yeah, again, similar to my other commissioners, I
appreciate that the applicant and staff have worked through the issues that we raised when we saw this the first time. I'm actually, the thing that a lot of the other items, the LEED Platinum and so forth, I was kind of expecting, but I definitely will be pointing to this, the use of the stormwater areas as something that's part of the development rather than something you quarantine off to the side. I think is something that actually it gives us the ability to better utilize the open space that's available, and not just give up that area as something that's wasteland off in the corner. I personally, I love the blue Palo Verde tree. I don't think of it as a particularly big shade tree. So, Commissioner Lowe, if you're looking for it takes a while for those trees to really get a good crown on them, but they're absolutely pretty trees. So I like the tree, but I don't think you should expect a lot of shade for the first several years until that's in place. But I appreciate the applicant's work and will be supporting the project as well.
Okay, and I have a few comments myself. Thank you, Vice Chair Cranston. Yeah, with regard to the 7-year development agreement, yeah, I'm in concert with my fellow commissioners that it's an appropriate thing under the circumstances with COVID. I appreciate Mr. Steele's comments, and I congratulate you on your foresight and bravery as you go forward in this time of great uncertainty to produce what looks like to me to be quite a quality project. I wanted to make a comment about, the jobs housing linkage, since I will not be on the commission when the next project comes up. But I understand the reason why this project was exempt, because it was going first. But I charge my fellow commissioners to watch for the jobs housing linkage on ones coming forward, so that we maintain a jobs housing balance. Of course, we really don't know how and whether COVID has caused a sea change in the whole mechanics of what has been going on over the last 10 years or so, but it's still important to have a good jobs housing balance in order to ensure social equity and a stable and just society. So please keep that in mind as you start reviewing other projects next year. I'm particularly appreciative of the fact that the project does so well on its architectural goals for the Gateway site. It's a modern, attractive design, visible from Highway 101. The parking garage is placed in the back and buffered by trees. I think I give you an A+ on the key corner treatment. In my earlier days, I prided myself in walking long distances around Mountain View and in the area. And one of the things that I found out early on was that walking around North Bayshore was a particularly boring experience. Even though there were nice buildings and greenery, the monotony of it and, no places to sit or anything made it something that I didn't repeat after trying it once. And so I have hope. You guys are the first shot at this East Wistman Precise Plan office project. And I really like what I see. In particular, I like the drawings of what the building looked like at night, and the overhangs, the glass treatment, and the specimen tree and public seating. I could even see myself going through there now that I may have more time. And once it's all said and done, and resting there as I go on to the next leg of my journey. I like the idea that the open space requirements have been exceeded by 20%, and that the tree canopy will be increased from 8 to 21% in 15 years. That's the direction we all want to go. And those are my main comments. And so, everyone having said something, unless there are further comments, I will ask if someone on the commission would like to make a motion. Commissioner Prelis, you're on mute.
Okay, so I need to get in here and bring up the recommendation unless I can ask Ms. Whitehill to do that for me.
And I'll just note too that the recommendation should be from the staff report, and maybe that's what. Actually, it's like Margaret sharing that. Okay.
Yes.
There was an inadvertent reference on the agenda to a resolution for recommendation on the initial study, so I want to make sure we pull up the right one. There we go.
I'd like to move that the EPC recommend the City Council approve the initial study of environmental significance for the 600 Ellis Street project pursuant to Section 15168 of the California Environmental Quality Act, Exhibit 1 to the EPC staff report, and adopt a resolution recommending the City Council approve a planned community permit and development review permit for a new 259,095 square foot, 6-story office building and 8-level parking structure, 80,000 square feet of transfer of development rights from 2535 California Street, 506 Showers Drive and 350 Showers Drive to 600 Ellis Street in relation to the Los Altos School District TDR program. And heritage tree removal permit to remove 23 heritage trees located at 600 Ellis Street to be read in title only for the reading waive, Exhibit 2 to the EPC staff report.
All right, that's the full text then. Staff?
That was what was in the staff report.
Okay.
Cox,
I just didn't know if there were other pages. All right, so then, okay, so having heard that, do we have a second? Please raise your hand. I see Commissioner Schmeezing. Okay, then having a second and a motion from Commissioner Capriles. Clerk Whitehill, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Capriles?
Aye.
Commissioner Haymeyer?
Aye.
Commissioner Lowe?
Aye.
Commissioner Schmeezing?
Aye.
Commissioner Yin is absent. Vice Chair Cranston?
Aye.
Chair Cox?
Aye. So the resolution of recommendation to the City Council passes 6-0 with one person absent. All right, thank you very much, Ms. Netto and Whitehill and Mr. Steele and members of the development team. All right, so let's move on now to public hearing item number 5.2, a 44-unit condominium project at 2645 to 2655 Fayette Drive. We'll start again with commissioners. Making disclosures about contacts with the applicant and site visits. Please raise your hand. Oops. Okay, there we go. Commissioner Lowe.
I have visited the site but have not met the applicant.
All right, Vice Chair Cranston.
I have also visited the site, but have not met with the applicant.
And Commissioner Schmeezing.
Visited the site, but not met with the applicant.
Okay. Let's see, Commissioner Capriles.
Visited the site, but did not meet with the applicant.
All right, and Commissioner Haymeyer.
Same as the others. I visited but not met with the applicant.
And that's true for me as well. No invitation, but I did go to the site twice. All right, so having gone through that, there is now, I see a staff presentation from Mr. Eric Anderson, project planner, and Stephanie Williams, planning manager and zoning administrator.
All right, can hear me? You can see my screen?
Mhm.
Great. Thank you very much, Chair Cox. Thank you, Commission. This is a 44-unit condominium project at 2645 to 2655 Fayette Drive. Again, my name is Eric Anderson, project planner. I'm also joined by Stephanie Williams. This slide shows the location of the project site relative to major streets around San Antonio Road, Fayette Drive, Del Medio Avenue. It's located half a block away from the recent San Antonio Center projects and across the street from the Dean development, which is a 5 to 7 story apartment project that is nearing completion. It's also bounded on the south by a 4-story apartment project facing El Camino and a 3-story apartment project on the west. And then there's a future mini park associated with the Dean development across the street and a future linear park from an agreement with the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission that's going to be built immediately to the east. The project includes 44 condominiums. It is requesting a density bonus, which affects the implementation of the San Antonio Precise Plan with the project. It has 44 units. It's 6 stories, about 77 feet to the top of the highest parapet, about 90 feet to the top of the elevator tower, which is set back from the facade. It has a roughly 2.5 floor area ratio. It is providing more than the required parking in the San Antonio Precise Plan or the parking standards related to density bonus. It is proposing to remove 8 heritage trees. It would relocate the remaining heritage trees, one of the palm trees, elsewhere on the site. You can see the site plan here. There is a proposed publicly accessible plaza in the lower right-hand corner. The garage down to the driveway down to the garage is visible at the top, and behind it is an amenity area for the residents. In 2016, a 24-unit condominium project was approved at this site. Shortly thereafter, Council approved a gatekeeper request to rezone the site into the San Antonio Precise Plan. This proposal was associated with the roughly 4 to 4 density. The applicant's first submittal under that gatekeeper in early 2018 was similar in scale and design to this current proposal, so it had 44 units. And it incorporated the requested density bonus that you see before you. The council approved consideration of that density bonus at a study session. Specifically, what was presented to City Council was similar to the current proposal, some minor changes to facades, design, change to the public benefit proposal, and a change to the income level and size distribution of the BMR units. Council supported the density, ownership, and unit types of the project. They were also asked to consider community benefit options, since this project is subject to community benefit requirements in the San Antonio Precise Plan. They identified potential transportation improvements as well as BMR. So here are 2 of the major views that would face the public for the project. On the right, you can see the view facing Fayette. You can see the prominent entry clad in brick veneer. The rest of the facade is broken up into smaller masses with an upper floor step back as stipulated by the Precise Plan. The ground floor is active with unit entries and landscaping. The left side is the view facing the SFPUC, so this would be visible to people using the proposed linear park along the SFPUC. The project uses balconies, materials, and plane changes to break down this facade into smaller masses. It also includes a rooftop open area, which you can just barely see sticking up over the middle of the building there, which does require a provisional use permit in the San Antonio Precise Plan. As I said earlier, they are requesting a rezoning into the San Antonio Precise Plan, so that requires both a rezoning action for the city's zoning map as well as San Antonio Precise Plan amendments to modify maps and other language relevant to the Precise Plan. The project would be integrated into a residential-only area of the Precise Plan, with similar standards to this area on the Ortega side of the Precise Plan. These standards would allow more height and more FAR and would require less coverage and fewer parking stalls than the R3D zone that it's currently in. Note that the project would comply with the parking standard either way. This zoning amendment is consistent with the 2030 general plan. The project does include affordable units pursuant to both the city's BMR program and the density bonus. It's proposing 4 very low income and 1 low income unit. This is the combination of 3 separate requirements from both the city and the state. The first requirement is the city BMR program. They were exempted from the new standard of 15% based on their having submitted all required items by the end of last year. And so they, under the old standards, they're required to provide 10% affordable units. So that's 4.4 units. The density bonus, in order to get their additional units, they need an eligibility of at least 4 very low income units, which they're providing. And under state law, there is a replacement requirement for any units that were occupied within the 5 years prior to the application by residents of lower income. And so based on that replacement requirement, they are required to provide these 4 very low income and 1 low income unit. Their density bonus request, as I said, they qualify based on the provision of the 4 VLI units for the density bonus calculation, and then as well the 4 VLI and 1 LI unit for the replacement. As a part of the density bonus request, they are allowed 1 concession, and their requested concession is that the size of the BMR units would not match the distribution of sizes of units in the project. So all of their BMR units would be 1-bedroom units, whereas there is a mix of 2- and 3-bedroom units throughout the rest of the project. They are requesting 4 waivers, and again, the distinction between concessions and waivers is that concessions are related to cost reductions in order to provide the reduced rents or reduced sales prices for the BMR units. Waivers are for physical constraints, and they are allowed an unlimited number of waivers to development standards. And so the waivers that are related to physical constraints on the number of units that they proposed are floor area ratio, height. They are requesting a 6th floor residential transition waiver, which you can see highlighted with this small box here. And they're requesting a 5th and 6th floor height at frontage transition waiver, which you can see in this box here. The 5th floor outline is here, and the 6th floor outline is right there. In addition, as part of the San Antonio Precise Plan, as well as the rezoning request as well as the request for additional height allowed by the Precise Plan, they are offering a $691,512 public benefit. This is divided into 3 different parts. The first has to do with the BMR units. Because the BMR units are for low and very low income, staff has found that units at that level often have trouble affording ongoing HOA costs or other assessments. And so the The project is providing $250,000 approximately. There is still some analysis that needs to be done by the housing division staff to determine the exact amount for this, but approximately $250,000 for this HOA reserve to ensure that the units can be afforded at very low and low income levels. In addition, the applicant will construct a crosswalk to connect the project and the SFPUC linear park with the future mini park across the street. They are covering 25% of that as part of their project conditions of approval, and then offering the remaining cost, the remaining 75% as public benefits. The remainder will be deposited into the San Antonio Precise Plan Public Benefit Fund, which would go to other public transportation improvements in the San Antonio area. Because it is a rezoning, it was not exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, so they conducted an initial study, and there were no unmitigatable impacts. Mitigated negative declaration was prepared for the project. Mitigation measures apply to air quality and noise and vibration and have to do with construction. The next step for the project is City Council. Final action tentatively scheduled for November 17th, 2020. Here's staff's recommendation for the project on 2 slides. In summary, the project is consistent with the general plan. It's consistent with the San Antonio Precise Plan, the Subdivision Map Act and City Code, as well as state density bonus law. And so staff recommends these actions. Recommending the City Council approve an initial study mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program, adopt a resolution recommending the City Council approve the zoning map amendment, approve amendments to the San Antonio Precise Plan, approve the project, and approve the vesting tentative map for the condominiums. That concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions you might have. The applicant is also here with their own presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Eric. And now let's hear from the applicant.
Thank you very much, Eric. Good evening to the Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners of the EPC and City staff. I'm joined by our architect, Maren Mogul from Studio T-Square, who has a presentation that I'm hoping she will share so that I can speak for those slides. Maren, you may need to enable video as well as enable sound.
Yeah, the host is disabled, so somebody needs to give me permission to share the screen.
You should have permission in just a minute. I just made you a co-host. Are you still unable to share?
No, it's great. It's working.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. So my name is Emmerich McDonald. I'm the managing member of Octane Fayette, the project applicant. We're very pleased to present what we believe is a great project, providing much needed ownership housing to the city of Mountain View. We purchased the property in 2014 and are very happy to see it finally coming to its entitlement approval. Having been a Mountain View apartment renter myself for almost 20 years, I'm familiar with the significant concentration of apartment complexes in Mountain View. Buying a single family home, detached home, can be prohibitively expensive, and as a consequence, we're very excited to bring this stacked flat ownership condominium project to its fruition. I'll make a few general comments about the project and then turn things over to Lauren. Our planner, Eric Anderson, did a great job describing a lot of the attributes of the project, so I'll try not to belabor repeating those, but I'd like to emphasize the following, somewhat of our beliefs. Ownership builds community, and these condominiums represent a stepping stone from apartment living, of which there is much, to detached ownership housing. Location is important. The sort of the nexus from a transportation perspective of El Camino Real and San Antonio Road, public transit, and the neighboring San Antonio Center, which has seen a lot of development, create an opportunity for great urban-suburban lifestyle. The density of the project is appropriate at 2.5 FAR and 6 stories. Considering especially the 50-year plus life cycle of a building like this will represent density, that will be used for decades to come. And as was mentioned in the presentation, being fully parked with 2 floors of underground parking will reduce the overflow of parking onto the city streets. The unit mix is larger multi-bedroom units targeted at meeting the needs of families and people working from home, as is more commonly the case now with COVID, and has a different mix and density than you would find in a typical apartment complex. Just as an example, the Bean across the street has 2/3 of their units as studios and 1-bedrooms with an average of 685 square feet. The average unit in our complex is 1370. We feel we have wonderful amenities with the public plaza, which Eric described, at the front of the complex, and then within the complex, a pool, spa, barbecue, club room, rooftop deck, and easy access to the 2 parks that you also described, the mini park and the Hetch Hetchy park. The project provides substantial public benefit. The $2.5 million corresponds to what Eric described as $691,000, which is approximately $700,000 plus about $1.8 million in direct BMR subsidy by the provision of BMR units. Next slide, please. Just showing the location generally at El Camino and San Antonio. This is an aerial perspective, which shows the building there circled, appropriately masked and contexted with the Domus apartment complex there, as well as the Bean, the 2 newer complexes. Go ahead, next slide, please. Just going to a site plan showing the sort of generous spacing proportions around the building and its footprint, and more in perspective with regard to the Hetch Hetchy Park, linear park that was described, as well as the future park across the street. Identifies also the crosswalk, which we've always thought would be a good idea on this stretch of Fayette, which is reasonably long, and you would define a crosswalk, you have to go all the way to Del Medio or to San Antonio Road. So having one somewhere in the middle, final location to be ultimately established in conjunction with Public Works, is, I think, going to be a great addition and allow people to transition from the Hetch Hetchy Park to the future park, and our public plaza with its seating, chairs, tables, etc., would be a great stopping point for with a beverage. At this point, I'd like to pass things over to Maren from Maren Mogul from Studio T Square, our architect. Maren?
Yes, good evening. Can you all hear me okay? Can everyone hear me okay?
Thumbs up.
Yes. Okay. So I'm Maren Mogul with Studio T Square, the architect on the project. First off, it is exciting to be here, and I wanted to thank all commissioners and staff as well for all the great feedback we received in the process, and great suggestions that have greatly improved the design. So a couple more comments to the site plan here. The project is really greatly integrated into the greater neighborhood as well as the immediate neighborhood. The key feature here is the plaza, as Emmerich already mentioned, at the corner of the Hetch Hetchy and Fayette Drive, right across from the Future City Park, and this plaza will be publicly accessible. We focus very much on the pedestrian experience along the sidewalk on Fayette Drive, and with that, the driveway into the underground garage. There's 2 levels of underground parking in this project. The driveway is to the north of on the north end of the project, so that it doesn't interfere with pedestrian crossing from one side to the other side, from the linear park to the Future City Park. Quick note about the setbacks from adjacent neighbors. The minimum setback from the 3-story apartments to the northwest side is 30 feet. And where you see the pool area, it's 48 feet minimum. And we'll get to that later. There's greater step backs on the upper levels. So here in large site plan, so on the bottom right, again, you see the plaza. It's really nicely designed with enhanced pavement materials. We have some great lighting, inset lighting on the plaza, lots of landscaping, and sort of a lounge area with nice seating and wavy benches. There's also a small fountain integrated and bike racks for visitors as well as for the residents. Lots of planting also, and then walking up from the plaza towards northwest. There's lots of planting and street trees and specimen trees, like a second row of specimen trees next to the street trees. So it's a really great experience on the sidewalk. Street lights, and then again, this nice furniture, these wavy benches, and bioretention planters, regular planters, enhanced pavement when you get towards the driveway and service area. So really great pedestrian experience here. For the residents, there's this sort of courtyard here with a pool, with a spa, with a generous barbecue area, and then we have this open air club room, which is adjacent to the indoor club room, and just on the ground floor, so the building will extend over that on the second level. Again, it's nicely landscaped and screened along the edges. On the edge facing the linear park at Chechi, we also have just enough planting to soften the architecture without blocking too much light from the residential units. So we are looking at this design as a truly four-sided architecture. So we really are paying attention to all sides of the building. We're creating so high quality, sensible design with equal attention to proportionate detail on all four sides. The most prominent feature is a base, which has brick veneer and sort of a tower element next to it on the main side. There's large projecting masses of white stucco and then small receding masses of lap siding. So we're really playing off different types of material to further and reinforce the broken down massing into smaller elements. So the materials we feel are very appropriate to the traditional to the transition between the more maybe traditional existing environment to the more contemporary modern architecture along San Antonio Road. So just for orientation here on the slide real quick, on the bottom, or let's say on the top left, you see the main facade facing Fayette Drive with the main entry and the entry into the garage as well. The lobby is on the left. The image on the bottom left is the elevation that's facing the linear park or Hetchachi, and the image on the bottom right is looking at the aside from the pool area. So what you can see already here on the image on the top left is the massing stepping down towards the apartments on the northwest side. So zooming in a little bit more, the Fayette Drive frontage. Strong ground floor elements with a brick veneer, and where the main lobby entry is, we are reinforcing this corner with both a heavier kind of a base and then a awning that is also stronger than most other awnings on the more secondary sides of the building. We have an offset tower element. We're stepping back the main massing on the 6th floor by over 6 feet. And then we have recently received some great input from staff and have slightly revised the cornices to be much thinner, very thin profile. And the way we achieve that is by tapering back the profiles on the bottom, so they look much thinner on the front. And then I want to highlight the ground level. It is designed to be really residential, to get a real residential feel. So we're not using a lot of warm materials there. both in the awnings that are covering the unit entries. There's 2 stoop entries, forgot to mention it earlier. There's for the ground floor units. There's 2 places where we're creating stoops and little stairs connecting those ground floor units to the sidewalk. And all these areas are enhanced with warm materials to really give it a nice residential feel. Then the elevation along the linear park Hetchy. So we work closely with staff on improving this facade over the last few weeks. And one of the major moves we made, which is a really great improvement, is moving the balcony you see here in the middle further to the left. And that has really improved the overall proportions of this elevation. So the awnings on this facade here are a little bit smaller, a little bit simpler than the ones on the main street frontage. But otherwise, we are really designing this facade here also as a public frontage. It's equally important. And we are, as you see, landscaping it to soften up the facade and the look a little bit. The railings I want to mention here for balconies, they are have some variation of railing as well. We have predominantly glass railings, and where the ground floor is with brick veneer, we are switching over to picket fence kind of, picket style kind of railing. So there's variation in those as well. This is the elevations you see it from the 3-story apartments to the northwest. So the left portion here is the minimum setback of 30 feet, and we're stepping back on the 5th floor by 12 feet, and another 14 feet on the 6th floor. And the other portion of the facade is, as I mentioned earlier, 48 feet back. So also here we're paying attention to the level of detail, so it provides variation and a nice play with shadow and sun with the awnings and the balconies and decks. And the variation of material to further enforce the different massing portions with siding versus stucco. Yeah, and with that, we really again appreciate staff's highly collaborative spirit along the process. And we feel that we designed a great project that really fits well into the neighborhood and complements the existing as well as the recently built projects in the close neighborhood. I enjoyed working on it, and along with my team here at CT Square, we were really proud of the design. So with that, questions and comments are very welcome. We have our landscape architect here as well, Nick Samuelson from the Gosado Partnership, in case you have specific questions about the landscape features.
Okay, thank you very much. So having heard from staff and the applicant, since it is a public hearing, we'll now take it back to the commission for questions. Please raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question to staff or the developer. Going once. Commissioner Lowe.
You can count on me on questions.
I'm glad of that.
Well, I have a few. Maybe I'll start with the HOA reserve for the BMR units. I'm wondering the amount that's set aside, how long is that expected to last?
We are working with our housing division to determine a value that can be that can be there for the duration of the unit, right? So that can accrue interest and that they can tap when they need to.
So 10 years plus, or?
Yes, it should be more than 10.
Okay, great. Thank you.
By the way, if I could ask the applicant to unshare your screen so that we can see each other. Go ahead, Commissioner Lowe.
Okay, so I had another question about where the property line is right next to the linear park. I'm wondering if there might be an opportunity to open that up so that the open space is even more open.
Yeah, unfortunately, the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission has a lot of very strict policies about limiting access. So they don't allow access between private property and their property without a specific license to do so. So that's probably not going to be approved by the SFPUC.
They approved the park, but it's unlikely that they will approve removing the fence.
Exactly. So I don't know if Renee, our Public Works representative, can speak more about this, about the nature of our agreement with the SFPUC for this park.
I agree with Eric. He said it correctly. SFPUC has some very specific rules about it. In previous versions of this project, they specifically asked us to remove a gate that was between the two projects.
Is it okay to comment on that right now from us, or is this closed?
Please do.
I'm the landscape architect, Nick Samuelson from the Gazetta Partnership, and we're actually the landscape architects working on the Fayette Park with Anne-Marie Starr and Public Works. So we're working on both projects, and we can't do the access, as you noted, between the two, but we did work on, as part of Fayette Park, having an open wrought iron fence, a detail that they'd used before, so there's a lot of transparency between the two. And we carried the planting that we're using in the park through that fence, so they feel that they bleed together a little bit more. So we tried to do what we could to connect those two, so they felt like they're part of each other.
Mm-hmm. And the linear park, what's under it? Are they?
It contains the Hetch Hetchy aqueduct water pipes. So it basically water for 1 million people on the peninsula.
Yeah. So therefore, it's paved on top. And any landscape that we do in that park will have to be in planters.
Sorry, it's they have very strict rules about the planting there. You can't have planting over, I think it's like 12 or 18 inches tall. Mm-hmm. We got away with putting trees in by putting them in planters and set a certain distance away from where the pipes actually are. Mm-hmm. But that was a negotiation we had to go through just to get that to happen. We're happy we're able to do that because having some shade and scale in there is going to help a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, great. Well, thank you for making the effort, given all the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. I'll come back for more questions and let other commissioners ask theirs.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Lowe. Commissioner Sneezing.
Thank you. I had a question. I don't know if this would be for staff or the applicant, but I was wondering if there's any information on the demand for 1-bedroom BMR units versus larger BMR units.
So we don't have any, staff does not have any information about that. I can tee it over to the applicant, but I will say that obviously in the housing crisis that we're in, there is demand for BMR units generally. So with that, I don't know if the applicant has any additional information about that.
Well, I'm very happy to say that we're supplying 5. The last I looked at the Mountain View website with regard to ownership BMR, I think there were 8 total in the city. So making a contribution of 5 and then being 1 bedrooms makes them more affordable. There is a price gradation as you go to larger units, so it makes them the most affordable in that sense. The sale price of the BLI one that we have 4 is a shade under 200,000 at present, and perhaps that changes by the time they've completed construction. But we're happy to be contributing to that existing relatively small stock of ownership of BMRs.
Thank you. And then there were.
Could you clarify the 200,000 figure? I'm sorry, I want to make sure I heard that right.
I believe that is the price that someone who is buying a BMR 1-bedroom unit would pay for the unit. $197,000.
That's the adjusted. That's the BMR price for.
That's the purchase price for a BMR unit.
And the market price that you're anticipating?
You know, so the 1-bedroom unit is a 1-bedroom units are I think from 625 to 770 or a little over 800 square feet, and sales prices could be $1,000 a square foot. It could be $700,000, $800,000, $900,000. So it's obviously it could be $700,000 lower than the market price.
Thank you, and I apologize, Commissioner Schmizing.
All good. I wanted to just ask, we received a letter from the Mountain, MVSPC, and they had a couple questions. They were wondering what kind of amenities would be included in the publicly accessible plaza that is proposed.
I'll tee that over to the applicant.
So we have chairs and tables, wave benches, and bike racks. And they're illustrated on the plans. As we can see them. We have backup to show what they actually look like in real life if you're interested in taking a look.
Great. I think that's all my questions for now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Smeezing. Are there other questions from the Commission? I'm not seeing any, so I will ask some questions. Oh, I'll ask some questions. So this is back to staff. I did go over to the site, and there is as you noted in the staff report, a 3-story residential rental townhome project that is adjacent to this 6-story project. And that's a bit of a departure from things that we've seen in the past where we typically have gone up only 1 or 2 stories from an existing project. I understand that, given the rules that the state has given us these days with the state density bonus, it isn't as easy to maintain the rules we had in the past. But I'm just wondering what, it did look like you did try to do something in terms of making the transition less abrupt. Could you maybe talk to that a little bit?
Sure. So the project is being rezoned into the San Antonio Precise Plan, and the maximum height for the area that it's being rezoned into for the San Antonio Precise Plan is 4 stories, with an allowance for an additional story with public benefits or a high quality public open area. It's also in the San Antonio Precise Plan, including a residential transition zone across that west side of the property to enforce larger setbacks as well as step downs to the height of the existing 3-story apartments next door. So the project is implementing those standards as modified by the state density bonus. Some of the ways that the project is complying with those transitions, you can see, I can bring up the a clearer view of the step down here. Oops, apologies, wrong one. So on this one, you can really see the step down. This area right here is the area where they're requesting a waiver so they can build a full-sized unit up here. But other than that, there is a step back, a pretty significant step back here between the 4th and 5th story. And along the frontage, there's a pretty significant step back at each of the 4th, 5th, and 6th stories in compliance with the precise plan standards. In addition, this wall over here is pretty significantly set back around the shared open area, so it complies with those transition standards anyway. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Okay, thank you. Let me ask about the conditional permit for the rooftop deck. I mean, how will you be determining what the appropriate hours are?
We have standard conditions of approval related to appropriate hours. So the condition of approval, I believe, says from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Okay. And that's all days of the week? Or?
That's right.
Okay. Let's see. This is to the applicant. I couldn't quite tell by looking at the diagrams. Are you using stackers in the parking garage?
No, no stackers.
No, okay. No stackers. Okay,
No.
and is there tandem
Everybody
parking?
normally parks with standard
Okay.
parking, full size spaces.
Do you have tandem parking in the garage?
No, no tandem parking.
Oh.
All regular parking spaces.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, we think that's important. All that stacker tandem stuff is just a nuisance for anybody. And so we made that a priority, and that's why you have 2 full floors of underground parking.
All right.
And all the units are fully parked, and we have 44 of those parking units are electric vehicle equipped. So every unit will have at least one space that's electric vehicle equipped.
Okay, and so I mean, like, how does the guest parking work? Is there like an overlay between guest parking and ownership parking, or is there a separate segregated guest parking area?
As you go down the ramp, there's a open public area prior to going through a gate, which would be presumably card controlled by residents. That area, as we have it currently designed, has 11 public parking spaces plus a accessible space. We need to have 12 by virtue of our numbers. There was a little bit of lack of clarity with regard to those numbers in terms of what we need to comply with based on the California density bonus. So we have an agreement as a condition of approval to either make room for a 12th spot before the gate, on the public side of the gate, or to provide a mechanism by which a spot will be made available on the private side of the gate. But it looks like what we most likely will do is make a minor rearrangement of some of the storage areas so that we can have all the guest spaces in the publicly available a portion of it that is before the gate and prior to the private section.
Okay, thank you. What's the term for the affordable units? Is it like the 55 years or what?
The condition of approval, it's in perpetuity, is my understanding.
In perpetuity, okay. Okay, and so then let me ask you, I'm just trying to get my head around. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed something then? Okay.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, anyway, I'm trying to get my head around the HOA reserve. I know we talked about this once in the past, but these ownership BMR units are, as you mentioned, pretty rare. I mean, the 1101 West El Camino was the last time we saw these. But in any case, is the idea of the HOA reserve to have a set of money that's set aside in case there's some emergency situation, or is it, you know, intended to be something that, you know, that the owners of the BMR units are normally expected to draw from?
No. So the sales price is set at a point that assumes regular HOA fees.
Mm-hmm.
But ownership comes with unpredictable costs. Mm-hmm. And so at some point or another, there will be a major assessment that will affect HOA, you know, the residents will have to pay for. And so it is those emergency situations that this is intended for.
I see. Okay. That makes more sense to me then. And let's see, what other questions? Those are my initial questions. Let's go over to Vice Chair Cranston.
I guess a clarifying question for the applicant. Commissioner Smeezing relayed a question that a member of the community asked about a public open space, and when I look at the drawings, I don't see any public open space. I see common private space in the pool area, but I don't actually see any public open space on the property. Is that, which is correct?
There's public open space in front of the lobby. There's a plaza that is open to the public. That is available to public access.
Okay, but the area where the clubhouse, the patio, the pool is private.
That's
private common space.
Common space for the residents.
Okay, and there is a fence between the property and the adjacent property to the west. I'm assuming so that private common open space is available to residents as opposed to just anybody walking in to use the pool, for example.
Yeah, that portion of the property, the kind of upper left, as the diagram is shown, is accessible only either through the lobby or gates on either side of the property.
And then I guess there's a question for staff and a question for the applicant. I had understood that the requirement for placement of BMR units is that they need to be distributed evenly throughout the entire property. All the placement in the drawings has them on the Fayette frontage. There is nothing along the Hetchy side. There's nothing along the west or the side towards the apartment structure. So I guess staff does that. It surprised me. I thought they would need to be more distributed throughout the property as a whole. And then maybe the applicant, why you chose to put them all on the Fayette-facing side of the property.
So there's a kind of single standard that would apply here. That's the standard of matching both the size of the units throughout the property as well as similarly distributed. Our interpretation is that the concession would apply to both of those, given that it's a single standard and that the constraints on the actual location of BMR units of one-bedroom units is such that you can't put them anywhere, right? They can only fit along certain frontages and in locations where the building design has certain dimensions.
The only thing I'll add to that is that different people like different things. The first floor units have an external access, a stoop, as was described by our architect. So you can enter your unit as if it's more of a residence rather than going through a lobby and a hallway in order to get to your unit. So the first floor units on the Fayette side have that access. The other two that are on the second and third floor, that side of the building does face the street, but it faces the new mini park, which is going to be very appealing as a visual aesthetic.
Okay, I guess I can't see. It's not apparent to me that there's entrances on the first floor drawings, but I'd have to look at it more closely. Okay.
We can bring that up. We can bring that up if you'd like. It's on the drawing that we have in our presentation.
Let me look while you take Commissioner Lowe's question.
Okay, moving over to Commissioner Lowe.
Thank you, Chair Cox. I have a couple of follow-up questions. One is, I'm wondering what's the perimeter of the underground parking lot? Because I see trees in the courtyard in the drawing. And I'm wondering where the underground structure ends.
Yeah, it's, I don't know exactly how many feet back from the property line, but it does follow the property line pretty closely. Probably about 8 or 9 feet back from the property line. The applicant might know exactly.
Yeah, the garage is about a good 7 feet from the front property line. And on other sides, it's a little further away from the property line. So it basically is below almost the entire site with setback. And the trees that you're seeing in the courtyard, some of them are on top of the garage in planters.
Okay,
the two palm trees and the 4 or 5 along the top side are actually in grade. They're not on the garage, but all the other ones are.
All the ones that are not along the property lines are in planters.
That's right. And so we're having to make those planters tall enough to handle the trees.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. And then my other question has to do with, now that you mentioned transplanting the palm, I appreciate your effort of, trying to transplant that palm tree. I'm also curious about, there's one more heritage tree, which is a coast live oak, number 11. Is that tree in a good enough shape to be transplanted since it's a native oak? In my mind, it has a lot more value for the environment and our public health than the palm. Palms are beautiful. I don't mean to say I don't like them, but I'm just wondering whether the oak was considered.
Yeah, I mean the palm. It's really just about the site and the limitations that we have here. Palm's nice and upright and vertical, and can fit in the tight spaces that we have to put a tree. And oak just didn't seem like it was really appropriate to try to fit in the little areas that we had around the perimeter.
Okay.
So, and the palm tree at the edge of the pool is going to look really nice, we think, back there. So that was the reasoning.
Okay.
But otherwise, yeah, that oak would be nice.
Right. So basically, it comes down to there's not a large enough space to save that oak to move.
That we thought was appropriate. Yeah.
Right. What about in the plaza and on the corner there? Is that area large enough?
If I can just chime in as the applicant here, the tree for that oak was that it is damaged and would not likely survive a relocation. That is, I believe, what the arborist report indicates. But additionally, the garage is underneath that plaza as well. So in order to accommodate electrical rooms, etc., bike storage spaces, and all the parking, we are pretty close to the, as we described, 7 feet or so from the perimeter all the way around. But I will just mention one other thing that I don't think was emphasized. This included a dedication of 5 feet of the front of the lot for the enhanced sidewalk, so that, which I think is a tremendous pedestrian benefit. So instead of walking on a sidewalk where there's a curb and parked cars and things and cars going right by you, there's now a 4-foot landscape strip after the curb before the sidewalk. So we gave up 5 feet of our property along the entire frontage for that purpose, and I think it really enhances the pedestrian experience.
Yeah, that's great. I really like that. So you have trees on both sides for the pedestrians, right?
Exactly, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that's really nice. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's all my questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's take it back to Vice Chair Cranston.
So I did find the entrance. Sorry, I missed that. My other question, I guess maybe it's kind of a peripheral question. I can't remember the staff member's name. It was for Public Works. I noticed that the drawings on the future park across the street don't currently include using the Hetch Hetchy right-of-way on the opposite side of the street. Is the agreement with the SFPUC only for the park between Fayette and El Camino, and no agreement has been in place to use that space on the opposite side of the street?
That is correct. The current agreement that we have with SFPUC is for the portion between El Camino and Fayette. The portion across the street that's the parking lot right now is SFPUC right away, and as much as we can figure out, there's a lease there for the adjacent property owner to use it for parking.
Oh, they control that right now, or they have?
SFPUC owns it, and somebody else is using it for parking.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay. Vice Chair Cranston, is your hand up or down? All right,
I'm done.
Okay. Any questions from Commissioners Haymeyer or Capriles? Nope. Okay. All right, then that'll be it for the questions and initial questions, and then let's take it over to the public to see if there's any public comment. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on this item? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Phone users can mute and unmute themselves with *6. EPC Clerk Whitehill will start the timer and let you know when your time is up. Clerk Whitehill, are there people on the line that would like to talk?
We do have one attendee who would like to talk. This is Bruce England. I'm going to allow you to talk and start the timer.
Thank you. And thank you, commissioners and staff. I'm Bruce England speaking on behalf of Mountain View Coalition for Sustainable Planning. At least one of our points was already raised by Commissioner Schmeesing. I'll mention a couple of others. Let me go back to the letter. I'm sorry we submitted the letter. I submitted the letter very late. There was just too much going on. I wasn't able to do it until late. So the fencing next door was already discussed, but the drawing shows fencing at the property line, but it also shows it facing Fayette. And I'm not sure, I was listening to the feedback, and I'm not sure it was clear to me if there would in fact be fencing facing Fayette, and if it has to be there. I'm just not sure. It just doesn't seem open at all based on my looking at the drawings. And then on the landscaping choices, I'm just not sure about this part, but as I said on the last agenda item, the need to protect migration paths for animals and to not allow any cone dropping or low-hanging trees adjacent to the bikeways. Then during the construction phase, if you could require that sidewalks and walkways are not blocked unnecessarily, that unfortunately happens quite a bit with projects around Mountain View, and it'd be good to actually have that requirement set up front. And I realize this is going to City Council on November 17th, but if there is any delay in the process, if there's a chance to bring this to BPAC for their review, I'm sure they'd appreciate it. And that is it from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. England. Clerk Whitehill, are there any others now?
No one else wishing to speak at this time.
All right, then I will close public comment at this time and bring it back to EPC deliberation and action. But Before we do that, I'd like to know if the applicant can answer Mr. England's questions.
As far as fencing is concerned, the fence along the linear park is mandated and specified by SFPUC. We didn't have any input with regard to that. There is space between the building and the SFPUC right-of-way, and that becomes, in a sense, private property. And so there is a short period of a fence and gate, which would allow entrance along the side of the property there. I'm not sure if that's what he's referring to. The fence, I believe, for SFPUC may continue all the way along the SFPUC right-of-way right until the sidewalk. I'm not sure if that's, Eric may be able to answer that question. I'm not sure, but it's specified by them, and it's their right, is my understanding.
Yeah, there's no other than maybe small fencing around the driveway, and obviously the delineation of planters and private patios along the frontage. There's no proposed fencing in this project. There's no, set way back along the SFPC. There's no fencing in front of the plaza. So I hope that answers the question as well.
And about the cone dropping trees?
I'll defer to our landscape architect on that.
Yeah, so along the street, we have crepe myrtles, and the street trees are red maple, so they're not dropping any cones along there, and they'll be limbed out to not have branches low enough that they'd interfere with anybody.
All right, thank you for that. And then now let's take it back to the commission for additional questions and comments before we would have a resolution. Please raise your hand. I see Commissioner Lowe. You're on mute.
Quick question about the trees on the frontage. Crepe myrtles are great, but we have so many around the city. Would you be open to considering some other species, perhaps larger stature trees there, to provide more significant shade, to make that pedestrian experience even greater?
Yeah, we're definitely open to using something more interesting than just crepe myrtles. It's I think we picked them because it's getting some color along there. They have a nice branching structure too, but we also thought the scale was good because we have the bigger story street trees, and these were kind of the second tier in that, and they're closer to the building. So we're happy to look at other species, or if you have some recommendations for that too. So that's definitely would be good.
Thank you. And then, are there any other sustainability features that you would like to talk about?
You want just for the whole project, or just...
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So maybe for the architect.
Space for solar on the rooftop. I think that would be, the other significant one.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Are there other commission comments or questions? All right. I don't see a hand up, so I will lead off with my comments about the project. So let's see. I'll start with the community benefits. I like the idea that they're being targeted for the San Antonio area, since this is the area that will be impacted by the new project. And I hope that we'll continue, as time goes on, that when new projects come up, that we'll be able to target the community benefits in the vicinity, because that, as I've mentioned in the past, that's one of the things that helps give public approval to a project, is that, you know, people who will be facing the impact of the project see the benefit of having it there. So I want to thank you for that. I had some initial concerns about the rooftop deck, as you know, this is a rather tall project and there are other less tall projects in the area, and whether the noise would continue. I think having a good rooftop deck agreement when that happens is a good one, good thing to do. I think that when I think back on the first development project I ever got involved in, it was the Madera apartment complex that is half a block away from my house. And one of my main concerns was about the rooftop deck, and it's turned out that that has not ended up being the area of most concern once we had a really good agreement. You know, and so, I mean, in particular, it's good that you're not going past 10 p.m. at night. People, you know, people will need to sleep. And so, I mean, you know, just, yeah, outreach to the residents about what goes into that can make for a good agreement and good neighbor policy. And yeah, I mean, you know, if I think about Madera, the only significant problem area still is the move-in, move-out issue, where they're not using the appropriately designated places. So anyway, I'll leave that as a comment for you to think about. In general, you know, as I've said much in the past, I'm concerned about, you know, the direction the state has set, and yet in this particular case, I mean, in terms of dictating rules that override local rules, and I'm bothered somewhat about, you know, whether that means that, you know, in principle, that the precise plans that we work so hard on are just generally disregarded. I want to thank Eric for answering some questions that, you know, led me to believe that they're not completely disregarded. And in this particular case, because we have such a need for ownership housing at a lower entry point in the city, I'm actually glad that the state density bonus law is working in the direction that I like, of giving us more of that. So it's you know, just like occasionally in a family, a bonus baby is a blessing in disguise. I'm looking at the state density bonus law as being a blessing in disguise in this case. Let's see. I like the idea that you put the crosswalk between the project and the new park that's on the Dean. I think that's a key benefit. And, you know, I mean, in general, I mean, one of my biggest concerns about San Antonio area and San Antonio precise plan is that once, you know, the units in the Dean are occupied and, you know, the office building comes back, you know, like the one for Facebook and the WeWork complex, you know, is occupied, about whether it will be easy enough for pedestrians to cross back and forth across San Antonio Road without significantly disrupting traffic. So anything that you're doing on that regard, I think, is a good thing. You know, please keep it in your back pocket as time goes on. I'm concerned that it's going to be a long-term issue. And let's see, I like the idea that you designed the architecture on 4 sides, because it's open to so much open space. Yeah, I mean, that's good foresight in that respect. And, you know, I do appreciate that aspect of it. I also appreciate that the units are going to be done in perpetuity, because, you know, in spite of the cycles going up and down in the Silicon Valley area, the need for affordable housing has been the one constant in our turmoil. And so you're doing a lot to address that. So I appreciate it as well. And finally, I'll say that you get an A+ from me on the parking. It's always been one of my favorite issues. I know that if I'm in an ownership unit, I mean, I've been now 8 years co-chair of the, I got drafted actually into being co-chair of the residential downtown parking subcommittee of my neighborhood association. And one of the things that I find as a constant with that is that in general, people don't like tandem parking. I mean, in places where I see, you know, long, narrow driveways that can accommodate 4 cars, invariably what happens is one car is parked in the driveway and the other 3 try to park on the street. And so, I mean, you know, you're doing a good job within this project to think toward the future and not have, you know, arguments between the neighbors over parking. I mean, it just is something that doesn't make for good neighborliness. And I appreciate also that you're not using stackers. I understand that in some instances, you know, it's the only way to make a project work. And yet I'm more concerned about them in ownership projects because of the sense that people might have with the regret that comes with the annoyance of having to do the waiting and the moving in and moving out. So you guys are really on top of my list for that. So given that Eric has said to me that this will be the last development project I review at the EPC, I'm glad we're going out with a smile. So at least that's my view of it. So anyway, now I will take it back to the rest of the commission for their comments, and I see Vice Chair Cranston with his hand up.
So I guess first I'd like to thank Eric for his taking the time to answer all of my questions that I'd submitted earlier in the week. I'd say in general, I like the project. If I have something that I am frustrated with, it's in that I was looking for something that said that we have to replace 6 BMR units with 6 BMR units, but it sounds like the law says we only have to replace it with 5. I really wish that you would go ahead and keep the BMR that you've got listed on Unit 2A, 2.8 on the second floor. Keep that, make that 2-bedroom unit a BMR unit like it says in the drawing rather than taking it away. But I mean, the design of the property, I think, is fine. I don't have the fact that the setback exceptions, I don't have a problem with because the choice to move the property to the Fayette Hetch Hetchy Park means that there is a greater distance between the property and the 3-story building next door. I started that for a long time when I was there looking at that. Again, my only regret is that we're going from six what are likely to be BMR units to 5. I understand, and I guess maybe it's a clarifying question with Eric. It's in the City of Mountain View BMR ordinance. We did not include a very low income tier for ownership property. But it sounds like in order to qualify for the density bonus, the applicant has to have the very low income level to be able to get the density bonus approval. Is that accurate?
So the BMR requirements that this development is subject to, so this is before council amended them last June, set an expectation of 10% moderate income, but also did not stipulate that providing very low income in lieu of moderate income would not comply. So under those standards and under the way that we've been interpreting those standards consistently, like going all the way back to, we're talking about the 1101 El Camino project, we have always interpreted those standards as saying that if you are providing income below the expectation, then you are complying with the expectation. Now, in our new BMR standards, we have a specific requirement that says you can provide low and very low income units, but in doing so, you have to also provide this HOA reserve. So that's in the new standards that this project is not subject to.
So I guess I don't know whether I would, as somebody who has lived in an HOA and paid HOA fees and seen those kinds of things, those kind of large expenses that come up, I don't know what kind of analysis staff is going to do, but that makes me nervous. Okay, quite frankly, I'd rather have two moderate income BMR units and give up two of the, and to get an extra unit and give up, one of the very low income ones, and less of the money has to be, that reserve is more, can be handled by somebody with a higher income level. Because we've, in my previous HOA, you don't know what's going to happen until it shows up, and there are certainly, construction requirements and protections that the builder has to supply for a period of 10 years. But if 11 years from now the pool dumps into the parking lot, that's a big expense that's going to get dumped on all the unit owners. And I'm just worried that calculating what that reserve is going to be very difficult to be realistic. So I would personally trade off getting an extra, a moderate income unit, or switching one of the very low income units to a moderate income unit on something like ownership housing like this to get the extra unit, so that the six units that are in existence on the existing property are still there, and it probably offsets to some extent the applicants, the lower income that the applicant's going to receive on a very, very, very low income unit versus one or two moderate income units. So I don't know whether I don't have a specific proposal, but I'm worried about the combination of the reserve and the loss of what I feel is actually 6 below market rate or market rate units on the property today, and only having 5 in the future. I don't know what this thing.
Yeah, just to remind the commission, the 4 very low and 1 low income unit are required by state law.
Let me ask a follow-up question on that. Is there a requirement that special assessments take money from the HOA reserve and be spread out among all the units, including the BMR units, or is there a way that the BMR units can be exempted from special assessment, just have them applied over the rest of the units? That's to Eric.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if Stephanie or Nicole know the answer. But I would guess that there are probably some housing laws that require these to be paid equitably, because obviously that would be a solution. But so and it's something that we're not pursuing. Stephanie or Nicole, do you know?
So I don't know. I mean, I do know that there are some particular state laws that govern HOAs and I think address assessments, but I don't know what those laws are and how they shape assessments or limit it for that matter.
So what would happen if you got in a situation where there wasn't money in the reserve to cover it and somebody wasn't able to pay the HOA fee? I mean, for the special assessment.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the outcome of that would. I'm sure that there are examples that our housing staff are studying because they are looking into this. They're doing a lot of analysis on this right now to determine the appropriate level for this reserve, looking at tons of examples from surrounding communities and when those have been required for BMR units. So we're doing the analysis. We're going to have a number. We're expecting something on the order of 50,000, maybe more per unit for this reserve, and that's the only information that I have for you at this time.
I see Commissioner Capriles' hand up. Oh, wait a minute. Vice Chair Cranston, are you done with, are you going to make comments at this time, or are it still questions? And
I guess it was, since I've been in an HOA, I guess I'd be worried about an exception for the BMR units. One of the things that we wouldn't want to have do is that the rest of the owners feel that the BMR unit owners are somehow not creating a division between them. So it was always based on square footage. So since the 1-bedroom units are generally smaller, their percentage of an assessment would be likely to be less relative to 2- and 3-bedroom units. But in our association, and this was state law, you don't pay your assessment, the HOA can go take your freaking house. Okay, so you don't pay the assessment, you don't have the reserve for it, the HOA can go come after you. So I don't know that would be, I don't know how that would work in a BMR unit, but that the law basically says I can come after you for you to pay your bills.
Did anybody do that when you were at the crossings? Did it ever happen?
It never got to that. It never got to the point where we ever had to actually foreclose on a house. We generally found a payment plan or something like that people could work through.
Okay. All right. Back to Commissioner Capriles then.
Okay, I just wanted to make a couple comments on the project itself. First of all, I'm delighted to see us get some, homes that can be purchased. And I think we've needed that for some time. I appreciate the thoughtfulness of the landscaping and extending the sidewalks and making this a very walkable and pleasant living area for people, in consideration for the neighbors around. The way the structure has been put together is another kudos to have that consideration, and the flexibility of choosing some other tree specimens for us that would be, very appreciated. I want to take into account the comment from Mr. England in making sure that we've got trees that are not dropping things all over the place and making it uncomfortable for bikes and pedestrians utilizing that area. I appreciate the public space that you've offered from across the park, and I think that is another very appealing addition to the neighborhood. So people feel like that they have another area where they can sit or they can visit and bring the community together essentially. And of course, the crosswalk over to the park is another welcome thought and idea to bring the community together. So I will definitely approve the recommendation to the council for this project, and appreciate the flexibility of the applicant in hearing our concerns, and kind of working through the HOA issue that Vice Chair Cranston brought up. Is certainly another consideration that I think that we should certainly take a little more investigation into. It's not an easy one, but I think Vice Chair Cranston brings up some good points. So that's my comments. Thank you very much.
Okay. Other commissioners with comments on the project? Commissioner Lowe.
I echo what has been said so far. I'm in particular excited about being able to offer the stack flat ownership units. which also include the larger units, the family-sized units, which are not that have not been that available in other development projects in the city, and really appreciate the BMR units as well. I think this location is really great because it's across the street from a future city park and right next to a future linear park, close to shopping and transportation. So overall, I do like the project. I do wish that the project could have had more space to accommodate larger trees, which are so important to our city. We are losing canopy coverage. So if there's anything the project can do further, that will be much appreciated in terms of bringing more larger climate resilient trees to the landscape design. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Smeezing.
I don't have much new to add. I certainly echo all of the comments of my fellow commissioners. I think Vice Chair Cranston brings up a good point for consideration. Yeah, excited to see ownership for middle income people, hopefully, and excited to see the way this project has really taken into consideration integrating itself into the surrounding community, whether it be those connections with the parks, the community benefits package going to the San Antonio area. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Commissioner Capriles.
I just wanted to thank both the applicant and the staff for their patience in working with the SFPUC. We know it's not easy, and it takes a lot of patience because some of the rules don't make any sense to us either. So I just wanted to let you know that we're aware of the challenge you have of working through that. So thank you, and I applaud you for your patience in working through all of that.
Yeah, I'll echo that, and also compliment you in working through all of the new state regulations having to do with density bonus, SB 330, and all of that, you know, that have made it very hard to design the project to be in compliance and also be successful. So good work. All right. Last chance for comments before we call for a motion.
I just asked Vice Chair Cranston, or do you have a suggestion or a recommendation modification that you would want to offer before this goes to a vote? In terms of figuring out, I mean, I'm not sure, and I think Nicole probably at some point we should do a little bit more research into what the state law says, but I mean, I share your concern that we wouldn't be creating a BMR unit and then maybe not setting that future owner up for success in some way if there isn't a structure behind it.
So I actually called Nicole earlier in the day to flag my concern to her, and she and Eric talked, and like I said, I appreciate the clarity and completeness of the answers. I guess, you know, I find it, I mean, while Chair Cox was complimenting the density bonus, this is one that actually, it feels like it's going the wrong way to me. When we went through the whole, I don't have a specific proposal. What we went through on the new BMR ordinance focused on more market rate units and not so much in the very low. And I would feel really better if it wasn't 5, you know, of the units that were potentially at risk in if there was something happened. But it seems like there's the law is the law, and basically what I heard is there's not a motion that I can make that doesn't violate the law. So okay. I'm not making one now. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So would some commissioner like to make a motion? Raise your hand, please.
And sorry, just to clarify, just because there was something said at the tail end, so that there couldn't be a motion that would violate the law. Sorry, Commissioner Cranston, just to be clear. I mean, the 5 VMR, just to be clear on this, right? The five VMR units that are being that are included in the project satisfy the state density bonus law obligation and the city's BMR requirements. And I'm not sure if maybe that's what you were referencing, but I just want to be clear about kind of what's being said, because that's what it satisfies, and that's the obligation.
So what I was prepared to propose was basically dropping 2 of the very low BMR units and replace them with 2 market rate units or even 3 market rate units. So that, the number one, it reduced the risk to the HOA on that going in the future, and also gave us more mix across income levels. But if the laws say that it has to be for very low, then a proposal that would trade more moderate for some of those very low doesn't fly, because the law says if you want to do the density bonus, you have to do the 4 very low. And that's what I meant by, Nicole, by what I was saying, that it would, in order for them to get the density bonus, they have to have the 4 very low. And so I can't trade those off for something else.
Yes, I appreciate the clarification in terms of the mixing units, and that's correct. I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page in terms of kind of what was being said, but correct.
I mean, it sounds like one thing that could be done is, but I don't think this is what you would want to do, is you could make a recommendation that the council ask for an additional BMR unit, okay? But that will come at the cost of the project. I mean, the developer would have to swallow that, and so it's not a trade-off. But that wouldn't be violating the law. I don't hear you saying that you're interested in going in that direction. Is that right, Mr. Cranston?
I'd like to have a 60 unit. And for me, it would be, I would not ask for another very low or low. I'd like it to be a market rate unit. So, my understanding was that the density bonus law, the fact that the applicant is able to ask for the concession to reduce the size and mix in order to make the project viable, leads me to believe that the addition, if they can't handle the mix across the unit size, that says that the viability of the project would be in question if they add a market rate unit. So I guess without knowing the economics, and maybe Eric knows that, it sounds like the density law basically says the applicants say this is what it is, and we have very little ability to say otherwise. I would like to get a 60 unit. I would not ask for it to be very low or low. I'd ask it for it to be moderate, but I don't know if that's feasible for the project to still be viable.
Vice Chair, if I could just chime in. In the report, it describes that there are 6 apartments on the property, but actually there are 5 apartments on the property, and then there's a detached single-family home on the front of the property. It sounds like you visited it, and I know there's a green fence in front of it, so you can't see it that well. But at the front of the property is a detached 2-bedroom home, and that home was never occupied by a person of moderate or lower or very low income. And at the time when the relocation took place, he was interviewed, and he voluntarily said, my income is in excess of those requirements. I don't qualify for any relocation benefit. I voluntarily vacate. And so that home, that house at the front of the property was never occupied by someone of a lower income. The 5 in the back, 4 of them, they were able to, meet with those people, and 3 of those were VLI and 1 was an LI, and then 1 evaded communication. I think he was proud and didn't want to have any relocation assistance, but by definition of the laws, a percentage of his unit counted toward, would count toward a VLI, and that rounds up to an additional one, and that's how an additional one VLI was added to the requirement. I don't know if that helps.
And I would just add that, you know, at this stage in the process, there's a lot that goes into kind of determining community benefits and determining finishes and determining design and all of this stuff. And it's all calculated in the pro forma. And to add an additional BMR unit at the end of the process would be disruptive to that. I can't speak for their pro forma. We don't have insight into that, but it's generally not something that is that projects can usually handle at the end of the process.
So maybe I'm just trying to think about, because in some ways a community benefit is the fact that you would have an ownership BMR unit in perpetuity. So I don't know about the calculation, and it sounds like it's still being negotiated what that reserve would be for the BMR units. But I wonder, Nicole, is it true that state law about HOAs is the same regardless if it's a BMR or a regular unit, right? So is it possible that the HOA of this future development could go to the BMR units and somehow create this, you know, sense of you're not paying your way to the BMR unit owners? I think that's what we're trying to avoid, is trying to figure out some safeguard to figure out some protection when that unexpected expense does arise.
So, and I can't speak to kind of the HOA requirements with respect to assessments. That's just not an area of law that our office really practices in, and I definitely don't have, you know, any experience with that. But I think in discussing earlier the reserve fund, and I'm not sure if it has a particular name, but under kind of phase 2 of the BMR ordinance, I think that was intended to help address the situation, right? At least in some respects. And, you know, Stephanie or Eric can jump in on that piece of it, but that's kind of my general understanding of kind of the use of those reserves funds, is to assist with, you know, as needs arise, to have a funding bank to pull from for the BMR units. Which, I mean, is not applicable for this project in terms of phase 2, but they are offering that as part of their community benefit for some amount of funding. But I think one of Eric's comments earlier was that our housing folks are kind of currently looking at how to implement that reserve funding requirement. But Stephanie, maybe you have more to add.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so previously, providing on-site units wasn't the requirement. People were allowed to pay in lieu fees. And so this is a somewhat recent thing that we're looking into, especially with the adoption of the phase 2. So it's an evolving thing, and Eric spoke to this earlier, but you know, they're looking around to some other communities that have been doing this for a while more than we have, because our previous BMR on, you know, firstly, all BMR units were done as part of density bonus projects, which were pretty few. And so now that the requirement is that you provide them on site, you know, this is becoming a very important topic.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the clarification. I just wanted to make sure if there's some way to reimagine, you know, what a community benefit would mean or how that calculation could be done. But I think I understand a little bit more clearly now.
All right. If there are no other questions, then I'm interested in entertaining a motion from the floor. Please raise your hand. I see Commissioner Schmeezing.
So to clarify, we're not adding anything else onto the language. And is it okay if I use the language from the agenda, or this works too?
Either one, but Eric has it up, but either way. Sorry, Eric.
Okay. All right. And sounds like we're just putting forward the recommendation from the staff, correct?
Okay. If that's what you want.
Okay. Just clarifying with my fellow commissioners. All right, then I recommend that the Environmental Planning Commission recommend the City Council approve an initial study, mitigated negative declaration, and mitigated monitoring or reporting program for the 2645-2655 Fayette Drive residential project pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act, Exhibit 1 to the staff report. Adopt a resolution recommending the City Council approve a zoning map amendment for the properties located at 2645 and 2655 Fayette Drive from the R3D multifamily zoning district to the P40 San Antonio precise plan to be read in title only, further reading waived, Exhibit 2 to the staff report. 3, adopt a resolution recommending the City Council approve amendments to the P40 San Antonio precise plan to be read in title only, further reading waived, Exhibit 3 to the staff report. 4, adopt a resolution recommending the City Council approve a planned community permit, development review permit, and provisional use permit for a 6-story, 44-unit condominium project with a state density bonus and a heritage tree removal permit for the removal of 8 heritage trees at 2645 and 2655 Fayette Drive to be read in title only, further reading waived, Exhibit 4 to the staff report. 5, adopt a resolution recommending the City Council approve a vesting tentative map to create 44 condominiums and 1 common lot at 2645 and 2655 Fayette Drive to be read in title only, further reading waived, Exhibit 5 to the staff report.
Okay, do I see a second? Thank you. Please raise your hand. I see a second from Commissioner Haymeyer. All right, Clerk Whitehill, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Commissioner Capellis?
Aye.
Commissioner Haymeyer?
Aye.
Commissioner Lowe?
Aye.
Commissioner Schmiesing?
Aye.
Commissioner Yin is absent. Vice Chair Cranston?
I abstain.
All right. And Chair Cox?
Aye. So it looks like the motion passes with 5 ayes, 1 person absent, and 1 abstention. All right, I will now close our public hearings for this evening. Thank you very much, staff and applicants, for working that through with us. And we will move on to item number 6, commission staff announcements, updates, requests, and committee reports. We'll start with Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Chair Cox. Nothing too special to report. I can say that our items that we were planning on holding on November 4th have been delayed, and so that meeting will be canceled. So the next meeting after that is November 18th. And Chair Cox, you will get an opportunity, I think, to review another project at a study session. We are likely going to be reviewing the new office building at the corner of California and San Antonio, Malone Guyer, another TDR project. There are also, and then also upcoming, we are scheduling our December 2nd EPC retreat. So we've got some fun and educational items planned for the EPC, including some information about state legislation. So really, really fun stuff.
I'm hoping to go out with a bang.
And we hope that you can share all of your profound wisdom with the EPC before you leave. So
Ah, I see. You're expecting it to be something that I can do in 5 minutes or less. I don't know what that says about how much wisdom you think I've accrued. Anyway, moving on. Are there other? Yes.
Scheduled for December 16th, or is December 2nd tentatively the last one for the year?
December 16th was never a regular meeting because of the holidays. It was not approved with the original list of meeting dates.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, so are there other commissioners that would like to make announcements? Vice Chair Cranston.
I guess it's not really an announcement. I guess it'd be a request. I was told that the event that was held a couple of weeks ago on, I think, on Green Streets or something like that. I'm sorry, I'm not remembering the title of it, but that one of the city council members was involved with. That was going to be recorded and might be available later to listen to. But I hadn't heard anything on if that was recorded and if it's available. So if that could be shared for those of us who were not able to attend, that would be great.
Mm-hmm. Eric, is that the one that you shared recently?
I believe the one that I shared was regarding trees, but I can look into the Green Street Symposium and see if that was recorded as well.
I believe they were all recorded.
Mm-hmm. And Commissioner Lowe, are you going to tell us about the meeting that you had in the reports?
Which meeting?
The one where Council Member Hicks spoke and also the gentleman from Palo Alto?
Oh, sure, yeah. Canopy held a webinar, I believe it was last week, on the topic of trees and development project review best practices. Council member Allison Hicks spoke about the vision of a city, with really tree-lined streets and, beautiful open green space for everyone to enjoy. And then a retired city planning arborist spoke as well and shared some of his knowledge and experiences from working in the city of Palo Alto. So that webinar was recorded and the link was shared by Eric already. Is that the one that you're referring to, Chair Cox?
That's right.
Okay.
I attended that and I found it very, very interesting and informative, and in particular, the comments from Council Member Hicks. She had a really beautiful slide deck of, what a tree-lined city looks like, and drew from examples in the Bay Area, but also in other places in the U.S. So, I mean, if you ever get the chance to see that, I think that's worthwhile. And I also enjoyed the comments from the former Palo Alto arborist, where he talked about the challenges of trying to preserve heritage trees on projects and what techniques are worth using. So I highly recommend it to members of the commission who are interested in that subject. So I will also add that I have a few announcements and reports. So at 2 o'clock today, I spoke briefly at the Senior Advisory Committee meeting about the role they have been rotating through the different, try to learn more about them and to also understand what the issues that they address that particularly interest seniors are. And so I thank Commissioner Capriles. She had the original invitation. She yielded to me as the chair to go speak at that. I did mention to them that, depending on your definition of who's senior, that we could, if we take the very broad definition of 55 and over, we have 3 seniors on the commission. And but I said, it's not that that, you know, there's seats reserved for seniors. It just happens to be that way. It would be Commissioner Capriles, myself, and Mr. Cranston is smiling because he knows that he's over 55. So, but the youngest of the three of us. So anyway, and then the rest of you are all just young people. So that was one thing that happened today. And let's see, it was interesting. I mean, most of the questions, there was a Q&A after I gave my short presentation. And the things that they were most interested in were ADUs. Because, you know, in terms of, you know, living opportunity for seniors, you know, granny and mother-in-law units were the slang terms that we used to use for them. So I was not able to tell them what the cost of the permit was, or you know, whether it was done on a square foot basis. I referred them to the Community Development Department. But Eric, if you know it offhand, I'll shoot it back to them in an email. Okay, so that was one thing. I want to make a pitch as an announcement, as I did last time, for the upcoming virtual meeting of the Mountain View Historical Association. Our former EPC Chair Baird will be speaking on November 1st from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. And doing a presentation honoring the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage in the United States. So put that on your calendar. It'll certainly be a memorable experience. And the third thing I just wanted to say is, and I'm sure none of you are going to forget, but for anybody watching, don't forget to vote before November 3rd. And if you didn't get a chance to see the Old Mountain View Neighborhood Association City Council Forum, it is online at our website, www.omvna.org. The video is there to watch, and there is also a downloadable copy of our special City Council election issue with statements from the candidates on their positions on the issues. So please take advantage of that if you haven't had the chance to do it already. So those are my reports and announcements. And I'll ask if there's anybody else from the commission that has something they want to talk about before we close the meeting. All right, not seeing anything else, I will then go on to item number 7 and adjourn the meeting at 10:28 p.m. Thank you all for your attendance and the staff for their excellent work tonight.